Hello and welcome to episode 305 of the Thinking LSAT podcast. Lots of good stuff on the show today. We had an update from LSAC weirdly announcing different dates than they had previously. And I don't know what they're confusing. Anyway, we have some new updates. We did a sufficient assumption question, a logical reasoning question from Prep Test 73. If you're not already perfect on sufficient assumption questions, man, that is a huge opportunity and you really need to get there. So hopefully that discussion will be helpful. We did a couple different pearls versus turds. Unsurprisingly, a lot of bad LSAT advice out there. We had a whole email full of turds from Cooley Law School, sadly. And then we dove into a bunch of stuff in the mailbag. We had the New York Times article about law schools being over-enrolled for this cycle and offering people thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars to not go to law school this year. That's a new one. Have you ever seen anything like that in your career?
Nope.
First time ever. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's new.
Yeah. And then we had a question about if you want to practice IP law, should you pay attention to the overall rankings or should you pay attention to the specialized IP rankings, which Ben just cringed. He made a face about how terrible it is to pay attention to those stupid specialized rankings. We agreed that you should go to the best law school you can go to for free. Before we dive in, just a couple of dates. This show is going to air on Monday, July 5th. Hope you had a happy, safe 4th of July. Saturday, August 14th is the next, that's the start of the August LSAT testing week. And you have up until August 25th to decide whether you want to register for the October LSAT. If you're studying for the August LSAT, I hope you'll come study with us for free at lsatdemon.com. I do a very fun study group every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And all you need is an LSAT Demon account to get invited to that weekly class. Hope to see you there.
Cool.
All right, let's dive in.
Yeah.
Hey, you put this on the agenda. What's this update from the Law School Admission Council?
Yeah, I got this email.
Just yesterday, it looks like.
Yeah, it's about the August LSAT registration deadlines. The first thing is stupid. It's just their first sentence is, the purpose of this communication is to share with you some information about important deadlines regarding the August LSAT. It's like
the purpose of this communication is to share with you some information. Okay.
That's the definition of communication.
Mostly what emails are for. Okay.
And the subject line itself is important information about the August LSAT. So
instead of putting the information,
yeah,
you put the words important information. Yeah.
Very redundant
of them. Yeah.
And unnecessary. So please, listeners, don't ever write like this.
Yeah.
But anyways, we have some August LSAT test dates. I think already knew these. They're August 14th and 15th, and I guess Tuesday, August 17th as well. The 19th is for accommodated test takers, apparently, who got accommodations for paper and pencil. So that is a thing.
Yeah.
But okay. So one thing I noticed here is that LSAC always uses this phrase, unscored variable section, to refer to the experimental section.
Right. Everybody out in the world always just says experimental section. Well, same thing as they call logic games analytical reasoning.
Yes. No one ever does that. Yeah.
Right. So, okay. Yep.
So if you're confused, if you see that and you're like, oh, wait, what the heck is the unscored variable section? That's just the experimental section, which can be any of the three sections, and it can appear at any time. And they use that to pre-test future questions. It won't be scored. Man,
you can't tell which one is the unscored variable section, so don't even try.
Don't try.
If you see logic games that look weird, that does not mean that that's the unscored variable section. That could easily be the scored section. You can't tell, so stop trying to tell. Just do your best on all 4 of the sections. Only 3 of them will count. You don't need to worry about it.
The other thing that stuck out to me is that when they announced the online 4-section version. So we have 3 graded sections plus this experimental section.
Yeah.
They said it would be around for at least 2 to 3 years. And then in this email, LSAC writes, the LSAT will continue to be administered in an online, live, remote proctored format through June 2022. Well, I mean, that's not inconsistent with it also being administered in that way for another 2 years after that. But I did think
But it is
was
a different deadline. Yeah.
it is an
Or a
oddly
different
specific and shorter time frame than what they were asserting before, and I just wanted to share that and see
Well,
what you thought.
it's not surprising. They are consistent in their inconsistency,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
right? It's like, it definitely seems like the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing over there.
Yeah.
I mean, they just weirdly, did you okay, a couple things.
Yeah.
Did you get any emails panicky on like Friday, Saturday from any students? Because I
No.
did. Maybe
Oh,
that's
you
because
did?
I check the help at
Oh,
LSAT,
yeah.
or
Mhm.
sorry, help at thinkinglsat.com and daily now for the new podcast. By the way, LSAT Demon Daily. It's a new podcast. Go check it out. It's not on Apple Podcasts yet because Apple Podcasts sucks, but it's on Spotify and other places. So go check it out if you can't get enough of Thinking LSAT Demon Daily. But anyway, I got 2 emails from panicky students because on, of course, Friday, LSAC sends out, like, right before closing the shop, LSAC sends out sends out emails to people telling them, hey, there's a problem with your June 2021 LSAT. There's been an incident and we're reviewing it with ProctorU. And on at least one of the emails, it said, we'll be back to you with a resolution by July 9th.
Whoa.
The fucked up thing about that is that they just went out of their way to say, hey, we're going to release the June LSAT scores ahead of the Friday, July 2nd deadline for registering for the August LSAT.
Yeah.
They went out of their way to say, hey, the scores are going to come out on, what is it, June 30th or whatever. The scores are going to come out in time so that you have time to, they were like patting themselves on the back about that.
Oh, we're early just for you.
Yeah, just
friendly.
for you, just to get, yeah. And then they send this email, and the email had no information. Mm-hmm. And both of the students were like panicked about, hey, what did I do? I thought it went perfectly well. I ripped up my scratch paper perfectly on the camera. I did everything the proctor asked me to do. There were no anomalies. And now all of a sudden there's an incident for 2 of these people. That's I just feel so sorry for these poor kids, because it's like, I really, it doesn't seem to me like LSAC understands how seriously students take this test.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because it's like this multi-million-dollar empire, like they think that it's a huge deal, but they don't realize that students also think that it's a huge deal and that they're gonna like lose sleep if you send them these vague emails about there being a problem with their something.
Yeah, well, the email timing is odd. It's like when you send someone a disturbing email like that, like we had an incident, clarified, it would be much better to say what it is. But since they don't know what it is, my question is, okay, why didn't you know about this a long time ago so you could figure it out and then tell them before this?
That's also deadline. What these students said. They're like, hey, I took the test 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks plus.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me that there's a problem with my thing and it's going to take another like 10 days plus to sort it out. And you're giving me just don't even email them.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I guess they have to now, right? Because they said the scores would come out and they are not going to come out for those students, but they really should have. That's why they have this time. They need this time to figure these things out. And it's like, no, we need extra time for the incidents. Okay.
it's like they just are going out of their way to make it as stressful and scary as they can for these poor applicants.
Yeah.
uh I don't know. Anyway, but by the way, I tacked on this update that I was just going through. I tacked that on to the last episode of Thinking LSAT, so that actually did go out to everybody yesterday. So, and my point of sending that out was like, I wanted to try to reassure people, like, well, listen, you're not the only one, because I got it from multiple people. Doesn't sound like there's anything you did, because I got it from multiple people, unless you were part of some like cheating ring that but then I don't think you'd be emailing me about it. If you knew you did something, I don't think you'd be emailing me.
Hey man, my side gig is taking off. I have
You're under multiple desks at once, providing the answers. Yeah, I don't think you did anything. You're not the only one. There's definitely nothing you could do about it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't worry. I mean, there's nothing you can do to control it. So there's no point in worrying about it. That's my only, condolences / reassurance, I guess, that I can offer people.
And make sure you're registered for August, right?
Because yeah, definitely get registered. I mean, of course, LSAC, it's almost like they run their whole system on appeals and exemptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure that these students, like, yeah, they're not signed up in time for the deadline, but LSAC fucked you. Like they did something, they flagged something on your account. I'm pretty sure that they would let you sign up late if you kicked and screamed about it.
I'm pretty sure they would too, but just what, $200 to assure that you don't give them one more excuse to make your life even more complicated.
Hey, this is why we continually harp on the idea that if you were ready to take it in June, you probably should just go ahead and sign up for August. Or, hey, if your score actually is going to be released in time, you could wait and see that score, and then sign up for August. You should probably also be planning on taking it in October and November if necessary. You just got to like fight the long war.
Yeah, the general rule of thumb is if you're not happy with your score or you don't know your score by the registration deadline for the next test, you should be registered for it.
Yeah. You also should continue to study during the 3 weeks that you wait for your scores to come back. We say this over and over and over, and some people listen to our advice. Many, many people don't. Like tomorrow, the scores are going to come out, right?
Yep.
And tomorrow we're going to get 1 million people are going to sign up for the demon because they're unhappy with their June score.
Yep.
And it's like, I appreciate every single student we get. And I want to help you as much as I possibly can. But I also have been telling you over and over and over not to waste those 3 weeks, because the August LSAT is going to be here before you know it. And it's just so dumb to, well, maybe I did okay. I'll wait and see how I did. And then we just get this, like, every single time the scores are released, we get emails from happy students, which we love to get those, like, hey guys, I did it, send us your scores. We love that. help@thinkinglsat.com. Please let us know how you did. We get a mountain of those ones and we're always like, great, high five, you're done, awesome. But then we also get a mountain of like, well, it didn't go as well as I thought. I'm really embarrassed to admit that and it's like, that's not surprising. You knew you weren't ready for the test in the first place, / you knew that you didn't do as well as you wanted to. Then you just sat there and did absolutely nothing for 3 weeks. And now you're like, when I hear people talking about shaking the rust off, it's like, God damn it, why did you let that rust accumulate? Like, that's just all you got to do is a little bit every day. People make it much, that's one of the big reasons why people end up taking a year or a year and a half or 2 years to finally get the LSAT behind them, is that every time they take an official test, they then just don't do shit for weeks or months.
Yeah.
And then they end up coming back to it, like starting over from square one. It's just not the best way to do it, y'all. All right. What do we got next?
A logical reasoning question.
Okay, cool. This is from Prep Test 73, section 2, question 10. I'll read it. I'm going to stop after every sentence and I'm going to let Ben react to it. We're meant to like demonstrate here the way that we would be thinking about it and the way we would be processing it as we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So an actor starts with, Bertolt Brecht's plays are not genuinely successful dramas.
Okay. I don't know where this actor is going with this argument, but that first sentence sounds a lot like a conclusion. If you're telling me that someone's plays aren't successful dramas, they suck. I'm like, okay, you going to back that up, or are you going to use that as evidence for something else? They might, but I'm anticipating them to tell me why they're not genuinely successful.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out here that there weren't any keywords there. There wasn't any, the words of logic like therefore and so, and that indicate conclusions. That wasn't there at all. Ben just saw that and went, ooh, you're attacking Bertolt Brecht's plays, and he immediately goes on, well, I was going to say goes on the defensive, but you're defending your guy Bertolt Brecht potentially, right? You're like, hey, what do you mean the plays are not successful dramas?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Right. And you're expecting evidence to come from here?
I would expect it.
Yep.
And we'll see.
Yeah, you don't have to be right. That could turn out to be a premise, but you're already on the right track because you're like, hey, that sounds like a conclusion. And I don't buy people's conclusions on the LSAT. I expect evidence to support conclusions, and I'm going to probably find fault with whatever evidence you provide. I'm probably going to say, hey, that evidence doesn't really add up to this conclusion.
Yeah.
But spotting that you think that, this actor is attacking Bertolt Brecht and you're immediately ambulance chasing, sort of, right? You're like, oh, really? You want to attack somebody? Well, I'm an attorney. So let's hear your evidence for that before you make that allegation. All right. Second sentence says, the roles in Brecht's plays express such incongruous motives and beliefs that audiences, as well as the actors playing the roles, invariably find it difficult at best to discern any of the characters' personalities.
Okay. There's a lot packed in there.
Yep.
But I know a couple things. I know that there's something incongruent about Brecht's plays, something about the roles that makes it hard for the actors and the audiences to figure out the characters' personalities. So what I'm imagining right now is the people are watching these plays, people are even performing in these plays, and they don't know, they don't quite capture or understand the characters' personalities. So there's definitely some sort of disconnect going on. The incongruent or incongruous motives and beliefs makes it seem like these actors or characters are doing one thing and then doing something else that would like leave you wondering what their real motive is. You're just confused. Okay, let's assume that that's true, that we don't know their personalities. Does that mean that the dramas aren't successful? Maybe people like that. I have no idea. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And so to like abstract what you just did there, Ben is expecting to find support for that first sentence, which now is looking even more like probably the conclusion of the argument. In that second sentence, Ben is like, whoa, that's a lot. There's a lot going on there. But I think what you just said is something about the incongruous motives, and we can't discern the characters' personalities. And then what Ben did is he accepted that as a fact because he thinks that that's a premise of the argument. And so he's saying, oh, well, okay, you're allowed to present evidence, and I'm not going to argue with your evidence itself. So granting that we can't discern any of the characters' personalities in any of Bertolt Brecht's plays.
Yep.
Right. It's like you're almost giving them not extra credit, but you're willing to give them full credit for their premise.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you immediately go, yeah, but that doesn't mean that the plays are not genuinely successful dramas.
Yeah.
You even said maybe people like that. Maybe that's exactly what makes a drama successful, right? You could have gone that far even.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we don't know. I at the same time, I could see why that might be a problem, but I need more to get to that logical conclusion.
This is not willful ignorance. Like we're not idiots.
Yeah.
Right. So like you can certainly go, it's almost like when you're having a beer, with your colleague, you go afterward, and the colleague could be the attorney on the other side. Right. And you're like, well, of course, if you can't discern any of the characters' personalities, that sounds like a pretty garbage play to me, but it's not in the record. And
yeah, exactly. I
since
agree.
That's not in
You're
the
probably
record,
right, but you haven't proven it yet.
Right. You're probably right, but that's exactly what we're going to have to fight about because the record is incomplete. Okay, perfect. Last sentence says, but for a play to succeed as a drama, and it's like, do you sense there, Ben?
Yeah,
that, like,
I'm ready.
They're going to get there almost, right?
Yeah.
You think they're going to make it.
Yeah.
But then they don't.
Yeah.
They say audiences must care what happens to at least some of its characters.
Yeah, this could have been a home run if they had just said, but for a play to succeed as a drama, audiences must be able to discern at least some of its characters' personalities or something like that.
Yeah, just discern the characters' personalities.
Oh,
period.
They can't do that. We know they can't do that. So they can't be successful because to succeed, you would have to be able to do that. But no, this actor, who's an actor, by the way, not a logistician, I guess, or a LSAC test taker, said that audiences must care about what happens to at least some of its characters. Okay, well, I get it. To succeed, the audience has to care about its characters, or at least some of them.
Yep.
Okay. Do they not care? We know that they don't discern any of the characters' personalities, but could you not discern the personalities and yet still care about the characters? Maybe you don't know the personality of your nephew. I still don't get it, but I care about my nephew. So I don't know.
And again, at the local attorney watering hole, or the bar association mixer or whatever, you're probably going like, well, yeah, I mean, if you can't even tell the characters apart, if you can't discern the characters' personalities, then I can certainly see why it would be very difficult to care about those characters.
Sure.
You're willing to probably grant that off the record.
Mm-hmm.
But on the record, you're like, wait a second. Yeah, maybe I have the world's most boring nieces and nephews who I forget their names. I can't tell the difference between them, but I can still care about them. Off the record, right?
Yeah.
Or sorry, on the record, because this actor has just not proven their case.
Yeah.
Excellent. And now you feel really strongly that first sentence was the conclusion of the argument?
Yeah, that's definitely the conclusion. The next two sentences are the pieces of evidence that the actor is using to try to prove that conclusion. There's definitely some elements there, right? It talks about what a play needs to be successful. And then it talks about some problems with the play. But those two facts combined aren't enough to prove that the plays aren't successful. Yeah. So
really no indicator words there. Mm-mm. I mean, there's that but,
which often introduces a conclusion, and some people go so far as to incorrectly say, oh, the word but, or however, introduces a conclusion. No, it doesn't. All it does is show contrast from what you just said.
Sometimes students ask us for like, okay, give me the list of the indicator words because I need to memorize the list of the indicator words.
Yeah.
And we actually encourage you not to try to do that, because in this argument, for one thing, I don't think there were any there aren't any useful indicator words in this actor's argument.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but Ben was able to figure out that that first sentence was probably the conclusion. Why? Just because it seems like Bertolt Brecht is under attack, and you're expecting that if somebody's being attacked, there's probably going to be some evidence behind that attack.
Absolutely. And for sure, I mean, I could see this argument going in a different direction where that is turned around and used as evidence. But after reading the next two sentences, it's pretty clear that those two are being used to support the first rather than the other way around, or rather than just a bunch of facts.
It wouldn't make any sense if that first sentence was meant to be a premise in support of the later two sentences. Then the argument would be like nonsensical.
Yeah.
Right. The argument isn't proven, but the argument does make sense.
You
Again,
can follow.
At the bar association mixer, you're standing there going, oh, I get it. If you can't tell any differences between the characters, then it's probably pretty hard to care about the characters, and you got to care about the characters in order for it to be successful.
So it's not successful.
So probably you're right that it's not successful, but my client, Bertolt Brecht, is paying me a lot of money to defend him. And so you understand the argument, even if you're not willing to grant the conclusion of the argument.
Yeah.
But the point I'm making is that you were able to figure out just simply, hey, they gave you 3 sentences. It doesn't matter at all what order they gave you those sentences, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But you still figured out, hey, these second 2 sentences support the first. So the first is the conclusion. So I'm going to grant you your premises. The second 2 sentences, the second and third sentence, I got to grant you those. Those are your evidence. Not going to argue about that stuff, but I am going to argue about whether those things prove the conclusion. Great. All right. So the question then says, the conclusion of the actor's argument can be properly drawn if which one of the following is assumed.
Okay. That's a sufficient assumption question, which is actually asking us to find an answer choice that will, in combination with the other 2 premises, prove the conclusion. So now, if I were to add this as a third premise, this argument would be sound.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you have the same reaction. I think you probably do, but I try to get this across in classes all the time at LSAT Demon. When I see a sufficient assumption question, that's like Yahtzee, like awesome, like fantastic. Sufficient assumption question, fantastic. Why?
Well,
why am I so happy to see a sufficient assumption question, Stan?
My guess is, if it's any similar to my happiness, it comes from the fact that the answer is very easy to predict, because there are only so many ways you can fix the argument. And
there's only so many ways you can make the argument win.
Yeah. And there are certain ways you have to, like, there are certain problems here you have to address. Like in a necessary assumption question, you could have 3 necessary assumptions and all of them would be necessary, and picking one of them would be correct, and you wouldn't have to address the other 2, and so they may not appear in any of the 5 answer choices. Whereas here, there's a problem when it goes from caring to, from discerning the personalities to not caring, right? Like that's a jump. And if we don't resolve that, I don't know how we're going to get to the conclusion.
I think it's fair to say that there are infinite necessary assumptions for every argument.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could come up with infinite weakeners, and each one of those weakeners could be reversed into a necessary assumption of the argument.
Sure. Just like a bunch of not statements, right?
Yep. And because there are infinite necessary assumptions, there are also just infinite strengtheners, right? Strengthen question, the strengthen category turns out to be one of the hardest types of LSAT questions because there's such a broad range of possible answers. Sufficient assumption questions, when you see, like, you should never, ever miss a sufficient assumption question.
Yeah.
It's the biggest opportunity. If you ever are missing sufficient assumption questions, you gotta fix that hole in your game, because there's no reason to ever miss a sufficient assumption question. It's very formulaic. It's once it clicks for you, you're going to realize, oh shit, that's all there is to it. There's a conclusion, there's some evidence. We need to figure out how to make that evidence force the conclusion to be true. And there's usually only one way to get there. And Ben, do you have a prediction for this argument? Again, the evidence was it's difficult to discern the characters' personalities. And in order for a play to succeed as a drama, audiences must care what happens to at least some of the characters. And the conclusion is, therefore, these plays are not genuinely successful dramas.
Yeah, my prediction right now is that if you can't discern any of the characters, then you can't care about them.
Perfect. Yeah. And this goes right back to our initial objection, right? Like one of Ben's very first objections was, well, wait a second. I mean, I can care about my nieces if maybe they don't have discernible personalities, but I can still care about them.
Yeah.
And on a sufficient assumption question, he knows now that he has to fix that problem in the argument. He has to bridge that gap. And that's like 100% just going to be the answer. A says, an audience that cannot readily discern a character's personality will not take any interest in that character.
Okay. That's very close to what I predicted. It doesn't use the word care. It says any interest. But if you don't take any interest in a character, I don't see how you could care about them. So to me, that doesn't seem like a big difference to worry about.
Yeah, the LSAT is never about just matching words. It's about matching the meaning. And if you can't take any interest, well, then that's the same thing as you can't care. And that's got to be the answer.
Yeah.
B, a character's personality is determined primarily by the motives and beliefs of that character.
Oh, okay. We already know that the audience can't discern any of the characters' personalities. So how that personality is determined doesn't really matter to me.
And it's, like, we're taking the time here to actually debunk these answers. But in real life, anybody who's any good at the LSAT at all, if you have any idea what you're doing on logical reasoning, you're just going to go, no, the answer has to say, if you can't discern the personalities, then you can't care about the characters.
Yeah. And
so B doesn't say that. If B doesn't say that, then I don't give a shit what B says. Right? In real life, we're going to dismiss that answer in 2 seconds, maybe.
Yeah. Yep.
C, the extent to which a play succeeds as a drama is directly proportional to the extent to which the play's audiences care about its characters.
Okay, we already know from the last sentence that to succeed, audiences have to care. We
already know it's necessary.
We already know it's necessary. This adds an element of the more you want to care, the more you succeed, and vice versa. But it doesn't address the gap, which is okay, but do the audiences care? You don't know. So doesn't help us.
Yeah, I mean, I always used to talk about the Golden Gate Bridge when I would teach sufficient assumption. It's like, hey, is this going to get me from the Richmond district to Sausalito? Because if it's not, I got to get from San Francisco to Marin County. If I'm not getting from San Francisco to Marin County, then that is not the answer for this question. It has to bridge the gap. So doubling down on let me tell you more about San Francisco, or let me tell you more about Marin County. Neither one of those are going to get there, right? We have to build the bridge. D, if the personalities of a play's characters are not readily discernible by the characters playing the roles, then those personalities are not readily discernible by the play's audience.
Sorry, I was thinking about your bridge analogy actually. Let me just read this really quick. So if the personalities are not readily discernible, okay, then those personalities are not readily. Okay, wait. This is just saying if the actors can't figure out the personalities, then the audience can't figure it out. Again, it doesn't close the gap, so we're done. But it also doesn't matter because we already know that both the actors and the audience can't discern the characters' personalities. So I don't need to like jump from the actors to the audience. I already know that the audience can't discern.
Both C and D are like doubling down on the evidence, like giving you more.
Yeah, like really
about evidence that already is in the record.
Yeah.
We were willing to give full credit for the evidence. We're not arguing about whether the audience can or cannot discern the characters' personalities. We know it's a fact. The audiences cannot tell the difference between these characters.
Yeah.
And D's like giving more about that, but it's like, no. Does that mean that they don't care about the characters? Doesn't say that, so that's not the answer. E, all plays that, unlike Brecht's plays, have characters with whom audiences empathize succeed as dramas.
I bet some people are tempted by this.
That's a terrible answer though, really, right? Once you know what
terrible.
You're doing, it's garbage.
It's terrible. But what it's saying is that if the audience empathizes, then it succeeds. And so
it's confusing, like, sufficient for necessary.
Yeah. And so then people think, but who cares? It still doesn't connect the gap.
It's also not bridging the gap. Like, nope. I don't give a shit. I'm trying to hang this guy Brecht, right? We're trying to convict Brecht of having plays that are not successful.
Mm-hmm.
E is like, well, if other people who make different plays are successful, I don't care. It's not going to help me convict this guy Brecht.
Yeah.
Answer turns out to be A. Totally predictable. Sufficient assumption questions are easy. I really want to get that point across. If you don't already think that sufficient assumption questions are easy, you've got work to do. And I know for sure we can help you. Like, this is a guarantee. I can probably improve your LSAT score by 3 or 4 points in a week.
Yeah. By
just making sure that you know the difference, that you can recognize this as a sufficient assumption question, and then just predict the answer every single time. By the way, there are sufficient assumption questions that are easy, medium, and hard. There are sufficient assumption questions that are at the beginning, middle, and end of a logical reasoning section. No matter what your level is, I don't care if you're 135 or 155 or 175.
Yeah.
If you don't get every single sufficient assumption question right, you're just leaving points on the table that you could easily be getting.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think that's the really big lesson is just like, boy, when I see a sufficient assumption question, my eyes light up. That's like just a freebie once you know what you're doing. All right. Pearls versus turds time.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. This was emailed in to help@thinkinglsat.com. Please do send us your your tips. This is coming to us from Western Michigan University Cooley Law School.
Okay.
Do we know anything about Cooley? It rings a bell that is not
good.
Not, yeah. Like when I hear Cooley, I do not think positive thoughts. But let me take a quick look at the ABA 509. This is, by the way, ABA Standard 509 report. American Bar Association requires schools to publish lots of information about their school. This is a trash law school. The 75th percentile LSAT at this school, Ben, is 149.
Oh, that's not good.
That is not good. The 75th percentile undergraduate GPA is a 3.1.
Okay.
uh, it just cannot be a law school that reliably produces successful lawyers. With those numbers, it just can't be.
Wow.
They don't give you the tuition. They give them, it looks like they've reported the tuition on a per credit basis. Which is annoying. It's $1,400 a credit. Probably, let's see, 1,400, probably times 30, right? So we're looking at a $42,000 a year law school. And their admission standards are so low that I cannot imagine. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody that goes to Cooley fails at law. In fact, I'm certain that many people who go to Cooley do succeed in the law. But I am also willing to bet that probably the majority of people who go to Cooley end up not successfully practicing law, like using their law degree to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, those numbers are just abysmally low. Anyway, they have some admissions. This headline was we were clowning on it in our teacher Slack. Ben and I both, and all of our teachers were mad. The headline is admissions secrets to conquering your LSAT prep. With admissions with an apostrophe S, which I was yelling about right away because it was like, I don't think that's wrong necessarily. It's just, couldn't you have written something else? Why did you choose to write a headline with admissions?
Well, they're taking
as the
ownership,
first word,
right? Like it's like their secrets, I guess. So admissions is like what is it? It's a group. I'm not sure what is possessing the secrets, but either way, they later say our seasoned admissions team, and they don't use the apostrophe S there. So that's at least inconsistent as far as I can tell. They're both.
Well, no, because it's possessive. So later, when you're talking about when they say, here are a few words of advice from our seasoned admissions team.
Yeah.
They're just describing themselves as the admissions team. But in the headline, it was possessive because it's admissions' secrets to conquering your LSAT prep, which conquering your LSAT prep, conquering the LSAT, maybe. I don't know that you need to conquer the prep for that. But anyway, words are difficult, I guess. All right. Let's see. Want to see some of these tips?
Yeah, let's see it.
Cool. How to prepare for the LSAT. Be disciplined in your studying. Planning and committing to big blocks of study time, 5 to 6 days a week, is more than reasonable. Identify the type of test preparation and learning techniques that work best for you and use this to your advantage. The fuck does that mean?
Well, first of all, they don't clarify what they mean by big blocks of study time.
Already, that's a turd.
Yeah, it's a turd for, we're saying 1 to 2 hours for most students. They're saying big blocks. People could walk away with this thinking they need a full-time job for studying for the LSAT.
Yeah, which other prep companies that shall not be named are notorious for mountains of homework, and you've got to study basically full-time for the LSAT for 3 months.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, it's counterproductive. It actually scares people away from doing the little bit every day that might make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, imagine hiring a coach for your gym workout. And they said, okay, well, I expect to see you here at 8:00 and we probably won't be done until 3 or 4. It's like, really?
Yeah. You don't work, do you? You don't have a job, do you? Because this is going to be a full-time, you need big blocks, 5 to 6 days a week. This is a full-time endeavor.
Yeah, you're exhausted after the first day. Come back to the next day, you're just going to be like withering away. But
hey, you just don't even show up for the first day. What? What? The gym for 8 hours? Kidding me? I have a life. I have work, school, family. No.
Well, it's just not even effective too, right? Like if you're really committed to that goal.
Yeah.
Identify the type of test preparation and learning techniques that work best for you.
That's the part.
That's useful. Yeah, okay.
Great.
Well, I'm going to go do that now.
That's like, do good on the LSAT. Pick the correct answers.
Avoid the wrong ones.
Okay, cool. All right, this is already a turd, but let's hear more of their great advice. Focus on improving the skills you identified as weaker areas during your practice tests. Parentheses S. Practice tests.
We want to be technically accurate because some of you may have just taken one practice test, and some of you may have taken 2 or more.
That means building and adjusting your study protocols as you go forward.
So high level, it's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it's like true enough, but it's also like totally obvious, right? Like, what are you missing? Maybe work on that. Okay, bullet points now. Are you struggling with logic exercises? Spend extra time on different logic games until your approach becomes second nature. So in other words, practice the test.
Yeah.
Okay. How about this part? This is where you for sure know that whoever wrote this has no fucking clue what they're talking about.
Yep.
Not a great communicator? Question mark. By the way, side note, lawyers are professional readers and writers. Lawyers are professional communicators. That is the job. If you're not a great communicator, that's fine. But this is not the field for you. I mean, here Cooley is basically acknowledging that they still want you to come to their law school, even if you're not a great communicator.
Wow. Wow.
Which is like criminal. But anyway, not a great communicator? Practice articulating your thoughts on paper so you can better master the written portion.
Okay. So
are you fucking kidding me?
We have 2 sections of the test that have been addressed: the logic games and the written portion. One,
the writing,
very important. One, not important at all. But the other 2 have not even been mentioned. How did this get any airtime?
Oh, I mean, this makes it very clear that they are a marketing department. And, you know, I can only infer that Cooley is basically a marketing company.
It's bizarre because they're the ones that would receive the written portion. They apparently don't even care about the LSAT score. Because I mean, if their 75th percentile is a 149.
Yeah. Ben, their 75th percentile is well below the average LSAT score of all the people who take the test. I mean, they're crazy. Just like their best are worse than average. And
this is,
and most law schools are like selective, where they would never even accept a 153 or whatever the average is of all the LSAT scores that are out there in the entire universe. You know, most most like credible law schools are like, oh yeah, we need lawyers who are going to win cases. So like our bare minimum is like 160. And here at Cooley, it's like you're like a superstar if you even approach average on the LSAT.
That is
not good. Not a good investment of time and money.
Just a business.
Just a business, yeah. The writing portion is not scored. It has nothing to do with preparing for the LSAT. We every day say, when people ask us about the writing sample, we say, oh yeah, it's not scored. Don't worry about it. Watch one video. We have videos on it. Watch a video for 15 minutes and then immediately do the writing sample. You do not need to prepare for or even think about the writing. And this is like, yeah, right next to logic games. This is their second most important thing. Okay, they go on. Read things that will improve your critical thinking, enhance your vocabulary, and improve your ability to synthesize information, such as, and then they give you a helpful list of stuff to read. Textbooks required when taking courses in critical thinking, philosophy, history, or English. Ben, is that a good LSAT tip?
Absolutely not.
Because what should you be doing if you're trying to improve your LSAT score?
You should be doing reading comp passages and logical reasoning passages and
We have 90
deconstructing them.
something tests. We have 9,000 LSAT questions that we can study.
Official LSAT questions. It's crazy.
Real LSAT questions that were the actual LSAT. If you want to improve your LSAT score, you need to be doing LSAT, not read investigative news articles by reputable news sources or literature that further explores topics that promote your ability to establish causation and logic.
What? Like, this advice is so vague too, that what are people actually going to walk away and do? They're like, oh yeah, I'm looking for literature that explores topics that might promote my ability to establish causation.
I don't need to read any more of this bullshit. Do you?
No.
Okay. That is a turd. There's a lot of them out there, y'all. So be careful, please. We now on the all-time leaderboard here, we have 15 pearls, 49 turds, and 23 ties. And it's just a shame. I mean, they are not helping anybody. They might think they are, but they're not.
Well, there's a link here. It says download the LSAT prep guide. And then of course, when you click on that, you have to put in your name and email address and phone number. And yeah,
it's clickbaity, like just trying to get applications. They want to take the money for your application fee, and it's bad times.
Yep.
Ben, did you know that we started the podcast in 2014?
I did not know that.
Long time ago. The Pearls versus Turds scoreboard right now is running very badly on a percentage basis.
What's the percentage?
Oh, I don't know. You could roughly calculate it if you wanted to, but it ain't good. Okay, ready for another Pearls versus Turd?
Yep.
2 in a row. From a new demon user. In the LSAT trainer, a drill was suggested to go to old tests and mark the conclusion and support of LR as quickly as possible.
Oh my God. It's so funny because it's like, I hope that this user, well, I don't know if I hope. We don't know if this is exactly what was suggested, right? But regardless of whatever was suggested, this is what the user thought was suggested. And this is from a decently like popular resource out there, right? And this is bad.
Why would you ever do that? Why wouldn't you just practice logical reasoning?
Well, I don't know, but I could see people being tempted by this sort of suggestion, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to go get good at identifying the conclusion and identifying the support, which is evidence in logical reasoning, as quickly as possible. Well, now you're just training yourself to do something that you actually don't want to do on test day. What are you going to do? You're going to go through the test and quickly identify the conclusion and evidence in each of the passages. And then what? Do you even understand them? What people have to realize is that understanding the passage will lead you to know what the conclusion and the evidence in that passage is, not the other way around. There are people who are like, oh yeah, that right there is the conclusion. I can see that. And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But does that help them understand what's wrong with that argument, which is what really is going on? No. It's like you're practicing for something you're not actually going to do, or you should not do.
Well, this would only presumably really be helpful for conclusion questions anyway. And how many conclusion questions are there on a typical test? 2?
I don't even know if it's helpful in a conclusion question because
right. I'm trying to be generous. Like maybe it would be helpful for that, but there's only like one of those per test.
Well, and the hard ones are the ones in which there is no obvious conclusion
And you
indicator.
certainly couldn't do it quickly.
No, you have to understand and then be like, oh, okay, I get what you're trying to prove. So it's just bad as
Okay,
quickly as possible.
right. It's just like, yeah, reasonable minds can disagree. And the LSAT trainer is like well respected. I don't personally like it. It says to read the question stem first, which to me is like, okay, I'm not listening to anything else you say. But that, whatever, different styles for different folks, I suppose. But for my money, and I know for Ben's money, and if you want to study with us, if you're listening to us and it seems like we make sense to you, then I would offer you this one tip, which is the second somebody starts talking about how to go fast, that's not there. Don't listen to them. Like that's not what we're doing. We're not racing the clock. We're not trying to go fast. We're trying to do careful, accurate work like a lawyer. And if we learn to do that, we'll go plenty fast. But it's not trying to go fast. That's not how this is done. And this seems like a drill that's just, yeah, it's like has the exact opposite of that whole like mojo to it, where it's like, no, let's get a test and see how fast you can go through and identify the conclusion on every single one. By the way, how would students even know that they were right?
A lot of questions don't indicate, oh, by the way, the second sentence was the main conclusion.
What about when a passage doesn't even have a conclusion?
And you identify it and you go.
Yeah, can't you just imagine somebody racing through like, oh, I'm going to get a test. I'm going to go through the section. I'm going to identify all the conclusions and like underline the conclusion on all 25 of the questions. Well, guess what, folks? There's not a conclusion in probably 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
How many?
20%. Yeah.
20%. Okay. 5 of those. There wasn't even a conclusion.
Yeah.
But you raced through and identified the conclusion. Okay.
Or maybe you know 15, that and you said that this one didn't have a conclusion, but it did. How do you know? It's just bizarre.
It's bizarre. 15 pearls, 50 turds, and 23 ties, which are basically turds. Please be careful out there in the LSAT interwebs, because there's just so much bad advice out there. Okay, ready to do some mailbagging?
Yeah, let's do it.
Read this first one for me.
Gentlemen, I wanted to pass this along in case you hadn't seen it. By the time the papers print something, it's old news. You've been talking about the increased scores discussed in this article for months. I appreciate your insights on all things LSAT. Thanks, Jay. Wait. Okay. So what's this article?
Son of a bitch. I have like 2 different New York Times logins, and I continuously keep running out of free articles. I'm not even sure we're going to be able to read this. At least we got the headline.
Okay.
I'm trying to log in.
Overbooked law schools are trying to induce some students to put off enrolling. All right. So this year was gangbusters for law schools. Lots of people applied with high LSAT scores, were accepted, and now they have more people in their classes than they can accommodate.
Yes, it was the most competitive law school admission cycle ever. If you're sitting there on wait lists, or if you have mediocre offers and you're thinking about going to law school this fall, don't. You should wait another cycle. It was just a seller's market. You know, unlike the stock market and unlike real estate, where we can't really predict the market, I do think we can kind of predict the law school market, because we know that these schools are going to expand capacity if the business is really good. They've done it repeatedly throughout history.
You just hire more professors. Yeah.
They just offer more classes. They just expand a little bit. And there's like waves of applicants that come in, and some application cycles are just less competitive than others. And you probably are going to get a better offer next cycle, Kaylin. Like, we have staff that are like thinking about going to law school, to schools that are not the best school or not really their dream school. And I just wait another year. You wait another 2 years. Like, look at these facts. Of the 200 American law schools surveyed by the Law School Admission Council, 190 of them saw an increase in application volume. So all of them, virtually.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, prospective students have taken a shorter version of the test online with fewer sections than before. And lockdowns have provided more time to study with fewer distractions. This sounds like wild speculation on the part of this New York Times author. But anyway, how do you know that? Really? Okay. I mean, I know a lot of people who have kids
are running around.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it is true. Many students performed better. LSAC reported that the number of people getting top scores of 175 to 180 doubled in 2021 from the year before.
Wow.
And those in the next highest range, 170 to 174, rose by half. So that's a 50% increase in the number of 170s to 174s. And it's a doubling, a 100% increase in the number of people who scored 175 or higher.
Hey, Nathan, let's chop off one section of the test and declare with boldness that nothing will happen. It's no different than before. And then see what happens.
Yeah. You're saying that maybe because they made it 3 sections instead of 4 and also slightly changed the balance to make logic games. I actually think it leads to higher scores when you make logic games more important.
Yeah, before, because a lot of people were acing them, especially the top scorers.
Yeah, if you're gonna score 170 or higher, you're probably gonna ace the games. And what they did in the pandemic is they made the games used to be 25% of your score, and now the games are 33% of your score. And
the test is shorter, and was no experimental.
The psychometricians that they always talk about and how they like so carefully craft the test, etc. It's like they did what? They were cool with that. They were just.
I'm
like,
sure they were like,
it'll be fine.
They were like, no, it's gonna be different. Like,
totally.
Shut up.
Totally. The powers that be were just like, shut up, psychometricians.
Don't you realize
care.
Our business?
We're doing this. Yeah. This is how we're doing it. Even though there were clearly better ways to do it. As I've said before, they could have dropped a section of LR, dropped 2 reading comp passages, and dropped 2 games, and they would have kept the balance of the test the same. They would have actually cut the test in half instead of cutting it in a 1 quarter, without changing the balance of the test. But I don't know. What do I know? Okay, so anyway, Duke has promised $5,000 to students who accepted a binding deferral, which is a pledge to attend next year. University of Colorado Law School tried the same amount and only got 2 takers. But to its relief, a few dozen have chosen not to enroll for other reasons, leaving it with a more manageable class of about 180.
Wait, so they got rid of 7 people and that solved their problem?
7? I said a few dozen.
Oh, a few dozen. Okay. Man, if I were that school, I'd figure out how to seat a few dozen people. I don't understand.
Yeah. No. Columbia University also dangled money in front of some students. $30,000 to join a newly minted exploration fellowship if they deferred. In other words, we're going to create this fake thing. Really what we're doing is we're like, oh shit, we over enrolled.
Yep.
It's like the airlines when they over enroll a flight, right? Oversell a flight.
Yeah,
and then they have to like beg you, pay you money and give you free shit to not take the flight. That's what's happening here is they're giving that's 30 grand from Columbia not to start law school this fall. Think about this, folks. Think about it. You're on the wait list right now, hoping to get in. Guess what? You're not going to, because Columbia is out there offering $30,000 to people that they've already admitted to not go.
So they're not going to open up seats for you.
No,
now.
They're not. No, it seems clear that the wait lists are not going to move. And anyway, even if they do move, they're just going to be like charging you 100% full price.
Yeah, I absolutely do not understand actually why they're paying these people not to come. Law school is such a weird thing. All you do is sit in a classroom. Just they should be paying their professors to teach one more class. You could fit 100 more people in that class.
Oh boy, it was a bad year for law school admissions. Next year might also be a bad year for law school admissions. I mean, good for the schools, bad for you.
Yeah.
But whatever, they're always going to be there. And you can go to law school for free if you just follow our advice. Apply early, apply broadly, apply with your best LSAT score. Don't pay for law school. Just refuse to pay for law school. If you're paying this year, I mean, you almost guaranteed could have gotten a better offer in any other cycle. Why are you in such a damn hurry? I don't know. All right, that's that. One more?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Thanks, Jay, by the way, for emailing in that New York Times article. Please do share stuff with us, news, questions, hot tips. Please send them in to help@thinkinglsat.com. We'll get you on the agenda for a future show. All right. This one also is from a Jay. It says, "Hey, Demon Team. I started listening to the podcast recently after receiving a recommendation from a friend. I wish I'd known about the demon before I started studying for the LSAT by myself. Even though I don't intend to take the test again, I appreciate the law school application tips in the podcast and have become an avid listener." I can already hear Ben saying, "What do you mean you don't intend to take the test again? Does that mean that you have your best score? Did you exhaust your 5 attempts? Or are you starting your legal career on a shaky foundation?" Anyway, my involvement in STEM research as an undergrad has motivated me to pursue a career in IP law. I have a question about deciding which schools to apply to. I think you would have addressed a similar question before, but I haven't found it yet listening to random episodes from your library. I want to attend the best school I can with a good GPA and a somewhat lackluster LSAT score. It's a 4.0 GPA, Ben, in a STEM field.
Okay.
And only a 168 LSAT.
Whoa.
Jay, dude, you have such a huge opportunity and you're about to just squander it. 168 is not bad. But with 4.0 and STEM, you could literally go to Harvard, Stanford, Yale. But
you just
need
have to work for
something.
a couple more months.
Yeah. You need a 170 something. We just told you that there are twice as many 175s and higher and 50% more 170s to 174s. And if you settle for that 168, I'm sure you can do better. And you're about to settle for that 168. You just let other people beat you in this law school admissions game. It's a tragedy. You just need a few more points.
It's like the magic lever, right? The LSAT score is the magic lever that moves everything when it comes to your application. Everything else, the GPA, it's hard to move, sometimes impossible to move if you're already graduated. Your experience, your resume, your personal statement, all these things, they're like mini levers. They don't make a big difference.
Yeah, it's like this is the one thing that you can actually do something about. I mean, and you have that 4.0, which is so awesome.
Yeah.
Like that, you can't fake that. You can't, there's people who have a 3.5, which is fine, but they can't, they can't improve it because they already graduated. And you've got the 4.0, which is awesome. Like you are a candidate for literally Stanford,
Harvard, Yale.
Yeah, but with a 168, those schools are going to go, what? That's below our 25th percentile. Maybe, they probably will look at you because of the 4.0 and because of the STEM. But man, if you applied to those same schools with a 173, 174, whatever, get into their 50th percentile, and now 4.0 and STEM and an acceptable LSAT that's not going to lower their public record.
Yeah.
That's like, probably a presumptive admit, I would think, at those schools. Trust me, they want STEM. Like there's a lot of people who think they're going to go into IP who studied political science or some shit in undergrad. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But people who actually studied STEM, yeah, there are IP lawyers, and they are people who can actually understand the technology. It's you, Jay. You're that person. But boy, you're just, God, why not just squeeze out a few more LSAT points? It's like, this is a stupid analogy, Ben, but it's like Jay's about to try to climb Everest without first like going to base camp.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're like starting from way down the hill below base camp, and you're going to like try to go climb this mountain of IP law. All you got to do is work at it a little more, like do some training at altitude, hang out in base camp for a little while, get your 173. It's not that bad of an analogy, is it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, anyway, let's finish Jay's email. I'm not sure if I should focus on schools that are well ranked overall or schools better recognized for their IP law programs. Better recognized, Ben, by who?
By themselves.
Yeah, totally. By some stupid list like on US News of what. Yeah. So here, listen to this. For example, Virginia and Northwestern are commonly ranked in the top 14 schools overall, but fall sub 20 for IP law.
I don't care at all.
I
do not care about that at all.
But Ben,
yeah.
Conversely, Boston University and Illinois Tech rank in the top 14 for IP.
No one cares.
Ben's upset. Shaking his head for the listeners. These lists of IP bullshit. If you want to practice IP law, yes, go to Virginia, go to Northwestern, go to the very best law school you can, no matter what you want to practice. Better law schools are better for everything.
Yeah, go to the best law school you can go to for free.
Yes. And man, you think you could get a full ride to UVA or Northwestern with a 4.0 and a 173?
I don't know. What does the estimator say? But you could.
I don't know. Let's see. lsatdemon.com/scholarships.
Yep.
We don't get a ooh, this is slick. 4.0, 168. Let's start with that.
Okay.
UVA, less than half. Northwestern, less than half.
Yeah.
Let's bump that up to a 173. UVA, full tuition.
Full tuition. Wow.
Northwestern, more than full tuition. Jay, are you going to make $150,000 or $200,000 in the next couple months? If you are, then good on you. And why are you even thinking about law school? Because you're killing it in some other field. No need for you to go practice law. But if you're not going to make a couple $100,000 in the next couple months, you should be studying for the LSAT, dude. You really need to retake this test. I'm glad you like the show. I'm glad you've become an avid listener. I'm glad you like our admissions tips. Ben and I are going to be 100% on the same page on this one. You need 5 more LSAT points. It's going to be worth at least $100,000.
At least. Plus interest.
Plus, starting your career from a better place. With a 168, I don't know, you might get denied at UVA.
You certainly could. Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be below their 25th percentile LSAT, I'm pretty sure, or at least close to their 25th percentile LSAT.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to be like 4.0, great. STEM, great. 168. We have to report that. That's public information. That's not an elite LSAT score. All you got to do, Jay, if you're not already perfect on the games, make sure you're perfect on the games. If you don't know the difference between a necessary assumption question and a sufficient assumption question, that's frequently the difference between a 168 and a 170. Boy, there's lots you can do there to squeeze out a few more points, and it's just worth so much money, like ridiculous money.
Yeah.
Okay. Ignore these stupid rankings for IP law. Like, if you, no matter what you want to practice, just go to a better school and go for free. I think we've already answered that last question. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah.
Want to wrap it up there, Ben?
Yeah.
Excellent. You can be LSAT famous. Get yourself on an upcoming show by emailing help@thinkinglsat.com. If you have any questions about the LSAT demon, you can email help@lsatdemon.com. That was episode 305 of the Thinking LSAT podcast. Thanks all y'all for listening. Nice knowing you. Don't pay for law school.